to the Naturally Inquisitive podcast by the School of Natural Sciences and Mathematics at UTD. Today we have two special guests with us, Parsa and Pouya, whose research is based on cancer. They are biology major here at NS&M. Parsa, would you like to introduce yourself?
My name is Parsa and Modareszadeh. I'm a rising senior in the School of Natural Sciences and Mathematics. I was also recently awarded a Goldwater Scholarship. I conduct research with my mentor, Professor Zhang, and alongside Professor Zhang and my twin brother, Pouya, we founded a biotech startup called HemePro Therapeutics. Pouya, do you want to introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you for having us, Mahesh. My name is Pouya. I am, as well as the twin brother of Parsa, I'm a rising senior and a student with NS&M. I'm also 2022 Texas Business Hall of Fame Future Business Legend awardee. And as Parsa mentioned, we started this company together. It's called HemePro Therapeutics, and I'm the CEO of this company.
Very well. So, can you please tell us more about your mentor and what research she's into?
Yeah, of course. Just to give a broad overview of what we're doing, cancer is a very tricky disease to treat. There are a lot of challenges in cancer therapy, one of the main ones being treatment resistant. So cancer is very smart. Whatever therapies you throw at it, it's able to adapt and overcome those treatments. And what happens is that leads to eventual treatment failure for patients. So what Professor Zhang's lab discovered was that cancers need this molecule called heme. So heme is this molecule that's ubiquitous throughout the body. It's commonly associated with oxygen transport because when it's bound to proteins inside red blood cells, it helps transport oxygen throughout the body. However, heme does a lot more than just oxygen transport. It can help us extract energy from nutrients in the mitochondria. It can also help us turn on and off certain genes. So the heme that is bound to proteins has many of these uses. However, there's also another type of heme called free-floating labile heme. And this type of labile heme can have a lot of bad effects on the body. It can lead to tissue damage, inflammation, and as Dr. Zhang discovered in her research laboratory, it can help cancers divide and grow and spread rapidly. Cancers use this heme as to create more energy. And so what our research is focused on is trying to prevent these cancer cells from taking up this free-floating labile heme and in effect starving the cancer cells of this heme. And by doing so, we can not only prevent these cancer cells from growing and spreading throughout the body, a process called metastasis, but we can also induce death in these cancer cells. By starving the cancer, we can cause the cancer cells to die and tumors to stop growing.
Interesting. So can you tell me more about your business?
Yeah, so HemePro Therapeutics was founded to bring these therapies that we worked on in the lab to patients.
Okay.
And so our primary goal in HemePro Therapeutics is to take these drugs that we worked on in the lab to clinical trials for patients. And so that involves many aspects of drug development and commercialization, and we have to get through certain milestones to be able to bring this therapy to patients.
Very well. So how was this transition from being into a research lab to handling the company?
Well, that's a great question. When you're in an academic lab, in a research lab, you're pushed forward by largely your own academic interests and scientific questions you want to answer. And this can range from different molecular mechanisms to just a fascinating new thing that you want to look into more. But being in biotech and being in industry, you have more of a set path ahead for you that you want to prove different things, such as efficacy and safety, to get this drug to patients. And I think that's the biggest difference, that in academia, while the patient is still the end goal and you want to push that science ahead to be able to create a meaningful difference for patients, in biotech that's just more immediate because everything you do is to push this drug to get into clinical trials, and once you're there, to get it to the market and get regulatory approval. So that has been one of the biggest differences. Of course, biotech has a lot of moving parts. Not only do you have your own company, your own research, but you have to have collaborations with different industry members, with academia. with disease foundations and patient advocacy groups that put that patient-centeredness into research. And of course, FDA interactions and funding is one of the biggest things. It's definitely been a transition to not just be a scientific person, but also worry about kind of pitching your idea and selling it to venture capital, to philanthropy, to have the funding to go to the next step.
Yeah, I feel like it's shifting from knowledge to the communication part, right? So when you have the knowledge, but now you need to communicate that knowledge to the investor.
Exactly. One of the problems we had when we started was when we were talking about this research, it was very academic.
Okay.
Which is very important that the science is, of course, the center of what we do, but not every person in the business world, not every venture capitalist knows that science. So you have to bring it down to a level where it's accurate, where you're still expressing the exciting ideas of your research well, but where you can make it accessible to the larger population.
That's very well. I just reminded me a quote by Einstein that if you are able to explain a thing to a 4-year-old kid, then you know that thing, right? So that's what you need to do when you are knowing so much knowledge, but the investors, they might not be knowing that. They might be knowing the part of the business, right? But explaining it to anyone is knowing that thing. So that's a great thing about you guys. But I would like to know what's the motivation behind starting the startup.
So the motivation definitely was to translate this therapy into the clinic, right? So there is, of course, this gap between academia and industry.
Okay.
And our biggest motivation to make this company was to bridge this gap, to have something that's just, it's a very common term to say, from the bench side to like the bedside, right? And that's the biggest motivation, that we saw we had this really cool protein, really cool way to target cancer that we just didn't see in the market. Our drug is the only drug that's in development with a specific mechanism of action to target cancer. And we thought it would be a shame to just let it just be in an academic lab, because there's patients every day who die of cancer who could one day potentially benefit from this. So that definitely motivated us to push it through. And Parsa, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think the motivation for doing this type of startup is to take this research and to put it in a context where it can help patients, and to really, take it out. So in a research lab, I think the main goal of research is to ask fundamental questions about science and to answer these questions using various scientific methods. For biotech commercialization and industry, the goal is to take this research that's been done, these answers to these questions that we ask, and see how can we apply that to help patients. And so that's the biggest difference I see in the biotech industry. We're trying to take all of this wonderful research that's being done every year in all of the universities throughout the US and globally, and trying to apply that to situations where we can actually help people.
Oh, interesting. Since we're talking about business, there's this golden circle thing where it goes like why, how, and what. If your why is clear, you can pitch how and what. That's what most of the big companies do when they pitch to investors. And when you were answering those questions about the motivation behind starting the company, it was going through why and how and what. And that's how you should target any company. And that's really interesting to know how you have that clear in your mind. So you have a long way to go. Now, so Parsa, I have a question for you. What are the various aspects of drug development?
Yeah, so drug development is, I guess, a very broad term that encompasses all of the work that needs to be done to take research, take a certain molecule or a certain therapy and get it ready for patients in clinical trials. And so there's generally, to paint with a very broad brush, there's two things we look for in a therapeutic. We want it to be effective, and we want it to be safe. So first of all, we need to demonstrate efficacy, right? We need to show that for whatever indication we're pursuing, this therapy is going to be effective. For our specific startup, we're trying to show that these heme sequestering proteins are effective in cancers. And so we've shown that they're effective in a variety of hard-to-treat cancers, including many subtypes of lung cancer, small cell lung cancer, non-small cell lung cancer, and even triple-negative breast cancer, which is the most aggressive and difficult-to-treat form of breast cancer. The other aspect of drug development, I'd say, is safety. So, and safety is something that I think differs depending on the indication you're pursuing. And just to give a brief example, for something like a vaccine, it has to be incredibly safe because you're giving this vaccine to generally healthy people, and you don't want it to have many side effects. However, for another therapy, for another indication like, say, cancer, there's definitely trade-offs, right? Cancer is very difficult to treat, and some of the therapies we have, although they are effective, they also affect healthy cells, and so because they affect healthy cells, they lead to some toxicity, and some don't have great safety profiles, like chemotherapy. Chemotherapy kills cancer cells, but also inadvertently starts killing the other cells in the body. And so these are two things, safety and efficacy, that have to be demonstrated in animal models before you can move on to clinical trials. With our data, we've also shown incredible safety because of the targeted method of action that our drug has. Since it targets the heme that cancer cells use, but not the heme that healthy cells use. Healthy cells can actually produce all the heme they need by themselves. We have seen no detectable toxicity whatsoever in our mouse model. So we're very excited that that's going to translate into minimal, if any, side effects for patients. And so, that together helps us make the case essentially to the FDA for approval to use this therapy in patients and to move it into a therapy where everyone can have access to.
Well, I'm interested in more about how you are telling in the end about the commercialization part. Since the knowledge is a very different thing, but the commercialization is a whole different part, right? So can you please elaborate more on the process of that?
Yeah, of course. And I think we had touched on some of it, but there's definitely a difference between just the research and commercialization. As Pouya said, I also believe that the science must always come first. We must always do good science and have good science. But there's, in industry, there's other aspects that have to be there for a drug to be able to move to patients and be commercialized. And so there has to be good intellectual property protections. And so we're lucky at UCD to have an awesome Office of Technology Commercialization, and they've been a great help in helping us secure intellectual property protections. Just a couple days ago, actually, our patent was issued and fully approved. Thank you. And so that has to be there. The intellectual property definitely has to be there. That's what leads to the financial incentive. But also talking about financial incentive, there also has to be an effective way to bring this therapy to patients. And what I mean by that is there is a lot of exciting stuff going around right now in biotech, and some of that stuff holds a lot of potential, but there are barriers to us commercializing these to patients. One of those barriers being financial. If a therapy costs millions and millions of dollars to make, and yet it targets a very small subset of patients, and those patients do not have the means by which to access that therapy, well, that definitely hinders the development of that.
And sometimes you need to even look at the commercialization part of it, because if it's not going to give you profit and all those funds that you have included in the research, then maybe commercialization of that particular thing doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah, definitely. The financial side has to make sense. The access has to make sense too. We want these therapies to help patients, so patients should have access to these therapies. And so, that's certainly a big part of what drives our motivation with HemePro Therapeutics. That we, because of the way this drug works, that we're working with heme sequestering proteins, we envision them as a first-line approach for patients with many different types of cancers. And so for cancer, one thing that a lot of times hinders access to care is access to these diagnostic tools. So, if someone gets diagnosed with cancer, oftentimes there's huge delays, and some people don't even have access to the genotyping, the next generation sequencing technology they need to find out, well, what drugs are going to be effective for this cancer. And so I think there's definitely a need to bring this type of therapy that's, a more systemic approach that can work for many tumor subtypes to help everyone, as our slogan is for the company, make sure that everyone has a fighting chance.
Fantastic. So you have touched some part about the what's going on in the industry. Pouya, would you like to please add more on what's going on in biotech? I would like to know more about it.
Yeah, of course. For going to that, just to jump on what Parsa was saying, one of the things that we're really excited about for our technology is the fact that it's largely agnostic across cancers. A lot of cancer drugs, talking about industry, target very specific mutations. A very new one out in like lung cancer are these KRAS inhibitors. Very, very cool drugs that are going to have a big impact on patients' lives, but they only affect a small subset of patients. And if you don't have the specific mutation, then you don't have these targeted therapies or targeted ways to target your cancer. You have to rely on systemic treatments like chemotherapies, which are largely toxic and may not have the best treatment outcomes. Because our drug is largely agnostic and we target many different cancers regardless of their genetic alteration, it allows us to have this novel value proposition of saying, look, we want to target many different types of cancers, regardless of what your biomarker testing says when it comes back in terms of the mutations. Our drug should be effective. And it's going to have a remarkable safety profile because we are selectively targeting the cancer. We target what cancer uses, not what normal healthy cells use. And this is why we were so excited to develop this therapy. It's not just another genetic tool or another immunological way to target cancer, but it's just something that is so unique that we don't even know where to characterize this as. As I was saying, there's nothing like this on the market. There's nothing like this, to the best of our knowledge, even in development. And going into, as you're saying, talking about different things in biotech, there are very, very fascinating things happening, such as CAR T cell therapies, which are when you take the patient's own cells, immune cells, and allow it to target a cancer. And while it's very fascinating, it is largely limited to blood cancers because it's hard to infiltrate that tumor collagen matrix and microenvironment that is immunosuppressive. And what we're excited about is our therapy can target solid tumors. It's not going to be limited just to blood cancers. Something else is that a lot of these different therapies are very, very expensive. They can, as Parsa was saying, cost millions of dollars per patient because they're so personalized. However, for our drug, not only because it's not personalized, we can bring the cost down, but also we can make this using bacterial cells, not CHO cells or this a way of making antibodies and other therapies that is just more expensive, which brings on this price point. So this idea of patient access that Parsa was mentioning and giving every patient a fighting chance is very central to our company's mission, that we want to make a therapy that's agnostic to different types of cancers, that's safe, and that hopefully we can make where everyone has access to it because their financial situation won't be a barrier to them accessing a life-saving treatment, which unfortunately is the case right now for a lot of new developments in cancer therapy.
It's good to listen to your purpose, why you are doing this, and I'm glad you touched the commercial aspect of it, getting it available for most of the public. Good to know that. But the part of the journey is the start. We have touched the journey where you are right now. We have asked you about your future plans, but let's go back to where it all started at UTD, right? So I would like to know from you, why UTD? Why you selected UTD at first place?
Yes, of course. So I think UTD was a natural choice. We grew up in the area in Plano, in high school in Plano. So there's I think a lot of outreach on the part of UTD into the community and various high school programs and such. So we're definitely exposed to all the great stuff going on in UTD. And UTD is a first-class research institute. And UTD I think does a great job of attracting students and great students here. Especially with financial incentives. Both Pouya and I are here on the full ride, and that really also motivated me to come here and made me choose UTD over a top 10 school to actually come here and have access to this incredible research close to home.
Oh, And how has been your experience so far here?
It's honestly been great. I've learned a lot. I've had access to a lot of great resources and tools. I think UTD does a lot of great research, and it allows undergraduates to have access to that research and to develop research skills from early on. We even have programs where incoming freshmen, before they even start their freshman year, can begin developing their skills as researchers, as undergraduate researchers. And UTD definitely has offered us a lot of great resources with our biotechnology startup on the business. And as I mentioned, the Office of Tech Commercialization does a great job of helping us with the legal aspect, the patents and all that kind of stuff, intellectual property, and also the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And Mr. Paul Nichols has been awesome, and great mentors connected us with other great mentors as well. Because we came from a science background, so we were offered and given a lot of help on how
the business aspect,
on the business side of this. Yeah, exactly.
That's a really great journey of yours so far. But I would like to know that why biology? When you have selected UTD, we know that UTD is best in research. But I would like to know the very start of the journey, right? You have selected biology. So what made you take biology, and what made you select biology?
Well, I think, from early on I fell in love with the science. In high school I remember taking my first introductory biology class and just being amazed at how much we could discover and what we knew about life and living systems, and especially how we could modify these living systems to do a range of incredible things. We can use enzymes to do practically anything we want them to do, to create different materials and drugs, and we can modulate these pathways inside the human body to stave off and fight disease. We can use biology and the new genetic tools at our disposal to genetically modify plants and animals to feed a growing population. So the promise that biology and life sciences had was definitely appealing to me. And for me, biotech especially, it feels like magic. It feels like science fiction. Just the incredible stuff we're able to do with the science.
That's interesting. And I was able to connect the dots, how it all started and why UTD, then how you started the company. It all made sense. I think it was all meant to be. Now, but talking about you, I would like to know, since most of our audience is going to be prospective students, and they would like to come to your path. So what advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that for prospective students, first off, I'd say if you are interested in biology and chemistry and life sciences, don't hesitate to come to UTD. It really is a great option. And once you come here, get involved in research early. Research is this chance where, before in high school, you've read what's in the textbook, and that may be very interesting, fascinating, but it's a chance for you to explore what's beyond that text. When the last page of your biology textbook turns over, well, ...
You apply that into your life.
Exactly, you get to explore and learn new things, and maybe the first day in the lab, you're not going to discover something. You for sure aren't. A lot of it is going to be hard work at first. But trust in the process that if you put in that hard work, if you learn your basic science, if you get into research early and you stick with it, there are a lot of amazing things that can come out of it. And kind of like the namesake of this podcast, I would just recommend for them to be naturally inquisitive.
Very well. Well, that's a great advice for prospective students. They're gonna, of course, take it, and maybe they have a long way to go. Now, so talking about, we have told us about what advice you would like to give to the prospective students. But being part of NS&M, Parsa, I would like to know what NS&M has given to you, or what you have learned from NS&M that is helping you in the business and in general is going to help you in life.
Yeah, so I think I've gotten a first-rate education in the sciences through NS&M, and definitely that education comes first. Learning about all of these things before we can actually apply them in real-world situations. NS&M has given me, I think, access to great faculty, great mentors, and a lot of great professors. I've been lucky to take classes with some really awesome professors who are passionate about what they teach, and really care about communicating the science and helping students learn. And of course, NS&M has allowed me to access and be a part of the incredible research that's going on at UTD from a very early stage.
It's good to know that. But since we are at the present part, I would like to know, since you will be graduating soon, what are your future plans? Like, what are your future 5-year plans?
Well, I think in 5 years, let's see, I hope that for our startup, we will be in the clinic in 5 years from now. We actually, right now, hope to start clinical trials by the end of 2024. And so in 5 years, I hope that we have initiated our first human clinical trials, that we are helping patients, and that we are branching out and expanding the indications of our therapies for a wide variety of cancers, so we can help patients.
Wow. And who has touched some topics about the advice for the NS&M grads, what advice would you give to NS&M students who want to continue to your path or come to your path?
So I think that it's important to know, if you're a life science student, to realize that there's more than just, there's a lot of options for life science majors. And one of those options is industry. And one thing I love about industry is the diversity of backgrounds we see. There's people who come from a more traditional research-oriented career, a lot of people who come from medicine, and a lot of people who come from the business side of things who later, maybe in mid-career, realize that they want to have an impact in life sciences and patient care and advocacy, and transition into biotechnology. So I would recommend exploring that option of industry, seeing if that's right for you. One of the great ways to do that, I think, is through internships. Definitely doing internships at larger pharmaceutical companies, large biotech, small biotech, can help you kind of get a sense of what the industry entails, what are the different things you can be doing in industry, and seeing if it's the right fit for you. I know there's definitely a great need for people with the right skills, the right skill sets, and the right training in biotech.
I would like to continue that since that's very great advice, by the way, and coming it from the right people is important. So I'm glad that you shared that advice, and I hope that the incoming students or the current students will take it further. But since you are twin brothers, I would like to know how it's working with Parsa in the apart from the lab in the company, how it's working with your twin brother.
Well, it's great to be able to work together. Though the adage is true that two brains are better than one. And biotech, I think, has definitely been a challenge to go from academia to biotech. It's a big jump, but it's great to be able to do it with someone who you know each other well. You are comfortable and confident, just interacting with each other and building something from the base up. So that has definitely been a big skill, or not a big skill, a big resource and a big help to be able to do this with Parsa. And be able to help each other in the parts that maybe he knows something that I don't, maybe I am better in something that maybe he doesn't know as well, and to help complement each other and complement each other's skills. I think that has been very valuable to us.
Wow, that's good to know. And can you tell us more about how you are planning your future ahead after graduating?
Sure. Yeah. Just like Parsa said, I want to stick with this company, and I really believe in our mission. I believe in our technology. I believe that hopefully one day we'll make a big impact on patients' lives. So I want to stick with this company and see where we can take it.
Great. So since you are the CEO of the company, I would like to know about this aspect of the financials, because you're doing the funding rounds right now. Now you have to explain these things to the investors who might not be having a lot of knowledge about biology or cancer, right? And then you have to break those parts into wheel-based level and explain it to them. And also the financial aspects, because that's what they are interested in, right? So how is that thing going for you, and how you are preparing for that?
It's a great question. I think that is a certain skill that being just a biology student and a researcher that I have had to learn. And big shout out to Mr. Paul Nichols and the Institution for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at UTD for helping me with that, and I am helping Parsa and I with learning how to pitch correctly and how to approach the investors. And if anyone is interested in innovation and entrepreneurship at UTD, I recommend just stopping by the Blackstone Launchpad. A lot of great mentors and people there to help you out if you have an idea or you're interested in this type of business world. But more specifically, I think the key has been to bring the science to, again, a level that is understandable by everyone, that isn't necessarily very, very science focused. And instead of worrying a lot about explaining the science, I think the focus shifts to explain the implications of it. The science is heme sequestering proteins bind to heme, and they do this function, and you have your oxphos lowered in very sciencey terms. But the implication is that a father that's diagnosed with cancer might get to live a few years longer, right? Or that some patient that's in a remote area that doesn't have access to biomarker testing can get on this treatment because it's agnostic and doesn't necessarily require a specific biomarker, while they might later travel to get that biomarker testing done. I'm talking about the ways it can impact patients' lives has been very pivotal in making this less of a sciencey thing and more of biotech and industry, and as well as keeping in mind that financials, team, markets, all of that is very important. And Parsa and I have had to kind of learn that from the base up, because that is something that isn't necessarily in a class where they tell you about how to make
it's complete
the financials.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly, but again, with great mentors, we have been able to do this, and I recommend for anyone who's interested in something like this just to not be afraid to go outside of your own area of expertise. Right? Yes, we might all be NS&M students here, but it's okay to venture into the business world, and it's okay to experiment with that. And I think some of the biggest changes you can make in the world, the biggest impacts you can have, are when you have interdisciplinary approaches and you bring in different fields together to collaborate and make a difference. And I think just to answer your question in one or two sentences, that's the key, to integrate an interdisciplinary approach and not be afraid to learn things that we don't know.
Exactly, learning everything daily, learning new things daily is the key, actually. And that's what we are like. That's what science is. We keep exploring, we keep learning, right?
Exactly.
And so what one quality is needed for someone who want to go into this path?
I think definitely perseverance. For us, it has been and continues to be a trial by fire. We were, science students, researchers who jumped into, in this industry role, this entrepreneurial role, and I think perseverance is important. Realizing that, trusting in the science, trusting in your technology, and oftentimes not taking no for an answer, seeing how we can best pivot, how having that guiding motivation, that guiding goal, and using all of the resources at your disposal to reach that goal.
I know, right? Because perseverance is something you need not to give up at the times when you are explaining it to anyone, or at the times when you feel that, since you are giving so many years to this, right, and you have goals set up for your 2024, and there might be some times where you might be feeling that you might not be able to reach that goal, but it's about why you started it and letting yourself know where we are heading towards. So that's a great advice. Thank you so much for that. Well, Parsa and Pouya, thank you so much for coming in. We had a great talk with you. I hope the listeners enjoyed this conversation too. We'll have it here, and I have to say that. So I will repeat this one. Well, Parsa and Pouya, thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for giving your time here. We had a great conversation. I personally learned a lot from you guys. I hope that the listeners learned a lot from you too. And thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Mahesh.
Keep listening to National Inquisitive by the School of Natural Science and Mathematics at UTD. We will see you soon.